Good afternoon. Cross-border capital inflows and systemic financial risks. Introduction. Cross-border capital inflows are an important source of funds for economic development in various countries, playing a crucial role in promoting domestic economic growth and increasing social welfare. Nevertheless, capital inflows may come in time and gender risks, including growth volatility, exchange rate fluctuation, and financial instability. Historically, some economies have experienced a boom-bust cycle due to substantial capital inflows, which have subsequently resulted in financial crises. For example, there was a surge in a capital influx before the Asian financial crisis of 1997 and the global financial crisis of 2008. For this reason, in the context of financial globalization, how to deal with the potential risks of cross-border capital inflows has become an important aspect that cannot be ignored in a macroeconomic operations and financial risk management. The critical impact of cross-border capital flows of financial instability has prompted scholars and regulators in various countries to conduct extensive research. At a macro level, large scale, international capital inflows can increase the supply of credit funds of countries and inject vitality into economic growth, especially for emerging economies that lack funds. International capital inflows are a significant driving force for economic growth. However, this comes at a cost. Large-scale inflows of international capital may intensify macroeconomic fluctuation, increase international import risks, and threaten financial stability. At a macro level, financial institutions are the primary carriers of cross-border capital flows, and abnormal cross-border capital flows will increase the risk-taking level of financial institutions and the spread of risks. Moreover, the negative impact of cross-border capital flows on financial stability also has the characteristic of cross-border and cross-market contagion. When a normal fluctuation in capital inflows trigger financial risk, the impact will be quickly transmitted to other economies, triggering a risk change, causing cross-border sharing of financial risk, and having a strong negative impact of the global financial system. Moreover, some scholars have posited that the impact of capital inflows of financial stability may vary contingent on the type of capital. Also, FDI usually involves investing in factories of merger and acquisition in an economy. It is closely linked to the real economy and is less prone to short-term change. Nevertheless, speculated factors represent the primary driving force behind capital inflows, and FDI is also inherently unstable. Indeed, during economic crisis, FDI is associated with greater continuity and less volatility than other types of capital flows. Given the heterogeneity of flow, the impact of capital inflows of financial stability is not the same across countries. For example, conducted a study examining the impact of various types of capital inflows on financial stability in a sample of emerging economies from 1986 to 2033, the study revealed that securities, debt, and other investment inflows are linked to heightening macroeconomic imbalance and financial fragility when compared to direct investment. Similarly, also found that the influence of capital flows on the financial stability of emerging market economies varies considerably content of the specific type of capital. Systemic financial risk is regarded as a concept that is both persistently and elusive to precise definition. In 2009, the Financial Stability Board, or FSB, the Bank for International Settlements, and the International Monetary Fund define systemic financial risk as the risk that the financial system as a whole or in part is damaged, leading to the interruption of financial service and having a potential negative impact on the real economy. The movement of capital across borders has a significant effect on the foundation of the financial system and the real economy. This makes it an essential factor in the emergency of systemic financial risk and pivotal conduct for the dissemination of international risks. In recent years, some studies have sought to elucidate the relationship between cross-border capital flows and systemic financial risks. However, study literature primarily focus on emerging economies, and there is a paucity of literature that distinguishes the impact of different capital types on financial stability in various countries for a global perspective. There are differences in economic scale and financial development levels among different economies, which may result in varying impacts of capital inflows on the financial stability of each country. A silent manifestation of this phenomenon is that economies with substantial economy scales and elevated financial development levels tend to exhibit stronger financial resilience and demonstrate an, an enhanced capacity to manage the risk shocks associated with capital inflows. In contrast, economies with small economic scales and diminished financial development levels exhibit a diminished ability to withstand the risk shocks triggered by capital inflows. To this end, this study is based on the International Monetary Fund's cross-border capital flow data for 33 economies for 2005-2022 and combined with the systemic financial risk of more than 5,000 financial institutions to evaluate the impact and mechanisms of cross-border capital inflow on systemic financial risk in various countries. The study found that cross-border capital inflows will increase systemic financial risk, and the increase in risk is related to the size of the economy. Economies with larger economy scales can be more capital inflows risks. Second, for the examination of the types of capital inflows, we found that both depth and equality capital inflows will intensify systemic financial risks, among which domestic credit channels increase the exacerbating effects of debt and equity capital inflows on systemic risks. In contrast, domestic and foreign interest rates differential and economic boom cycles have increased the exacerbating impact of the capital inflows on systemic risks. Eh, 3. Heterogeneity analysis found that in countries with market-oriented financial systems and low financial development levels, equity and the capital inflows have a more apparent exacerbating effect of systemic risks. These studies' marginal contribution are as follows. First, we offer a global perspective of the actual impact of different types of cross-border capital inflows of systemic financial risk in various countries. Certain studies have explored the potential financial risks of capital inflows. However, these studies primarily concentrate on emerging economies, and there is a paucity of literature exploring the impact of different types of capital inflows on financial stability in various countries for a global perspective. Different economies has different economy size and degrees of openness. The same scale of capital inflows doesn't mean that the probability of a financial crisis in the economy is higher. The results of this study verified that the impact of capital inflows on systemic financial risks in different countries is relative to economy scale and explain the different impact of capital inflows of the same scale on systemic financial risks in different countries. Second, it broadens the research on the impact of cross-border capital flow on systemic financial risk. The extent literally predominantly focus of the credit channel and asset price channel through which capital inflows affect financial stability. There is a paucity of literature that pay attention to the role of economic cycles. In different economic cycles, the impact of capital inflows on systemic financial risks in different countries may vary. To this end, this study verifies whether the economic cycles of various countries play an important role in the impact of capital inflows on systemic financial risks. This has enriched the relevant research on cross-border capital flows and systemic financial risks to a certain extent. Third, based on the cross-border capital flow data of 33 economies from 2005 to 2022, we explore the heterogeneous impact of capital inflows for the perspective of difference in financial system structure and financial development level. Furthermore, we also explore the impact of abnormal capital flows such as capital inflow surges and capital flight on the financial stability of various countries. The research conclusion and suggestion on this study provide policy reference for countries to prevent cross-border capital flow risks and maintain financial stability. Literate literature and review and research hypotheses. Cross-border capital flows are recognized as a crucial mechanism for international risk sharing and a significant source of important financial risk. Some scholars argue that globalization, by fostering increased cross-border capital flows, enhance the distribution and dispersion of financial risk across borders, thereby mitigating the exposure of financial institutions to domestic shocks. Especially, the increase in cross-border banking business has helped to reduce the probability of financial crisis and had a positive impact on the overall economy. Conversely, of scholars contend that the globalization of cross-border capital is associated with heightened risk-taking, and the propagation of these flows can transmit external risk shocks, thereby increasing exposure to such shocks. Consequently, active cross-border capital flows may catalyze systemic risk, where instability in one country's financial system can ripple through and impact the financial stability of other nations. Regarding the impact of capital inflows on financial stability, some studies suggest that large-scale capital inflows may exacerbate risk diffusion in the financial sector and elevate financial risks. Found that during boom periods in capital inflows, banking, currency, and inflation crises are more likely to occur. Large-scale capital inflows will cause stock and real estate prices to rise, leading to economic overheating and procyclical accumulation of financial risk. This result is more pronounced in emerging economies, demonstrated that without adequate management of international capital inflows into emerging markets, excessive foreign borrowing and foreign exchange exposure may occur, fueling domestic credit booms and accelerating the formation of asset price bubbles. When capital flows is suddenly reverse, the expansion phase, characterized by credit growth and rising asset price, can swiftly turn into a contraction phase, ultimately plunging the economy into a severe financial and economic crisis. Furthermore, some theories attempt to explain the detrimental effects of capital inflows on financial stability from the perspective of incomplete financial markets. For instance, argue that emerging economies often face a shortage of safe assets due to financial repression within their financial system. This shortage creates conditions conducive to the formation of bubbles in unproductive assets, thereby escalating financial risks. Shift the focus to provide debt and stock transaction, predicting that in case where the domestic financial system is underdeveloped, capital account liberalization may lead to shorter prosperity following capital inflows and rising asset prices, a trend that is ultimately unsustainable in the long term. Eh, Leyendo este artículo nos habla sobre los riesgos eh, acerca de los flujos de capital transfronterizos. Ellos allí explican sobre un estudio que hicieron teniendo en cuenta como las muestras transaccionales de varias empresas entre el 2005 y el 2022. Evaluaron el impacto y el mecanismo de diversos tipos de entradas de capital transfronterizas y evaluaron como esos posibles riesgos financieros que se dan en ese tipo de transacciones. Encontraron también que más que todo se daba mucho riesgo, eh, que se manifestaba pues como el riesgo principalmente en economías con bajo nivel de desarrollo financiero y también en los sistemas financieros orientados al mercado. Eh, También se habla sobre las fugas de capitales y sobre el efecto de aumentos repentinos de las entradas transaccionales que también generan, digamos, una inestabilidad en el mercado como tal, o sea, en la vida financiera. Eh, Además de esto, el estudio concluye que los efectos regulatorios de los ciclos de auge económico interno y amplifican el impacto de las entradas de capital accionario y de deuda sobre los riesgos financieros. Es un estudio entonces eh, sobre esas transacciones transfronterizas donde se explica cuáles son como los riesgos que pueden haber en la estabilidad financiera de un país y cuáles son como los principales casos en donde se genera ese tipo de riesgo financiero. Es básicamente como eso lo que nos explica la lectura.